Hello, my name is Voya, welcome to my deep guide, and today we are checking out the Kindle Scribe black and white front lit generation 3 device. I've already done the first impressions video earlier, so if you haven't checked it out, do check it out as well, because my first impression videos are usually like a subjective, real-world first impression type of thing, where I try to look at the device in isolation and just give you my impressions. And in the in-depth review, I've already spent now several weeks with the device. I've put it through testing, I've used it and all of that kind of stuff. And here I try to bring more objective and measured type of results and findings for the device itself. So both videos are complementary and should be able to give you a more complete picture. So I do invite you to watch it if you haven't watched it yet. This is an 11-inch, 300 ppi, upgraded internals type of a Kindle Scribe. Black and white panel, custom stack that they've created in pursuit to improve the front light surface to screen distance, which was actually really bad in generation 1 and generation 2 of Kindles at 1.55 millimeters, like more than any other device that has a front light. With this new stack, they've managed to improve it. No, it's not dramatically better than other devices, but at least it's now down to around 1 millimeter and is on par with other devices with the front light. But you do get that Kindle quality front light, which is granted a really good and well-balanced front light. This being a pure black and white device means that it offers a really good image quality, and to a large degree it does. There's one issue that the device currently has with the current operating system version, and I strongly believe that's a bug and something that I encountered in the first impressions as well. And that's when rendering images, it tends to display the image correctly for a fraction of a second, only to flash and refresh into this really ugly color banding and ghosting type of a thing, which genuinely feels like a bug. You won't be encountering this issue when you are looking and reading at ebooks or documents or basically characters and text. Nope, you don't have that issue, but it does apply to some graphic type of content, so you need to be aware of that. Overall, my first impression of this device was that it under-delivered for me personally because of the image quality, and everything else it was just like kind of meh. That was my first impression, but it proves to be slightly wrong, because when I put the Kindle Scribe Black and White front lit device through its paces in the DAF analysis, it proves to be actually, on the whole, better than the Gen 2. So it's faster rating latency, doesn't really have better battery life, it has a worse battery life, has worse contrast, has better readability because it's of a larger size, has roughly the same type of reflectivity. So as you can kind of see, it's a mixed bag. And on top of that, there are issues, for example, artificial limitation of Gen 2 users not being able to have access to Google Drive and OneDrive, and only 2025 version or Gen 3 version has that access, which is like, yeah, come on, like why would you do something like that? And on top of that, you have the whole Kindle Scribe ecosystem. Some people like it, and that's great. So if you do like it and it suits your needs, that's fantastic. And with the black and white front lit device, you will have an excellent device for that. And I'm sure that you are going to really enjoy using it for your needs. And it's probably going to be the best version of the Kindle Scribe that you've had thus far. However, for those who were hoping that Kindle Scribe is maybe going to go the route of expanding its e-notebook capabilities, while they've added some stuff, it's mainly following, the AI route of data mining and trading and collecting all of your personal data from your children, from you, and from everyone else. So if you're okay with something like that, and that's still something that you're, kind of, yeah, cool, and you're okay with paying $100 more than your older Gen 2 device, well, then I guess that's going to be okay with. I mean, for me personally, the ideal pairing would be this hardware, this device, and something completely different, for example, Supernote Manta software. That would be a very, very nice pairing, and then it would be a very, very compelling device because it genuinely has some really, really meaningful strong points. So let's talk about the design and build quality. It's very nicely designed, it's an excellent build quality, and I really do like the new the design of the equal bezels all around the side, and it just lends itself to be a very nice piece of design, with one caveat, and that is that the black and white front lit version is using a pure white frame around the screen, which is not pure white because it's an e-ink screen. I think that this is a mistake because I'm frequently encountering an issue with that white frame because after a prolonged reading session or a writing session, I get the image imprint and image retention is there. So when I start blinking or looking away, I clearly can see the edges of the frame, or basically where the white color was. And that forces the eyes to actually work extra and a little bit overtime. And in fact, if it was a darker frame than the screen itself, that would have been a better solution. So for me personally, the Kindle Scribe 1, the dark one, poses less strain on my eyes when reading and working with it for a longer period of time than this new one, mainly because of that frame. So I'm personally interested to see when finally the non-front lit version comes out, which does have the correct frame around it because it's matching the color, or it's supposed to match the color of the screen itself. That, I believe, should provide for a much more pleasant reading experience, but you won't have the front light, and that might be a deal breaker for some. So on this one, that frame, the white frame, you need to be aware of that it's going to affect your eyes in that way, and also it's going to cause the effect that the darkness of the screen appears darker than it actually is, simply because you're measuring it constantly against the pure white. And it doesn't do the device any service whatsoever. Other than that, everything else is really good. The pen holds it nicely and all of that kind of stuff. Speaking of the pen, it's a redesigned pen. And here is my Note Max, and here is my Kindle Scribe OG premium pen from Gen 1. That is my absolute favorite pen that I've been using now for years. So I was excited to see that there's a new pen in town. Unfortunately, the redesign, I don't like it. They've lost things that were really good. The number one thing is that material is different, and now it's a more slippery pen. Number two thing, now it's a perfect oval. It doesn't have the flat line that this one had. And that makes it actually very difficult to orient where the button is when you're simply working with it. This one, it's very easy because you feel where the flatness is, and that's where the button is. You no longer have that. That also, I think, may be the reason why the new pen is more slippery, and it just kept falling out of my hand while I was using it way, way more often than other pens, and this one basically never falls out of my hand. One thing that's good about the new pen is that the material of the new eraser cap feels excellent. This one is really hard. You can actually hear that. So, and this is how it sounds when you tap it on the screen. The new one feels really, really nice, and it feels like a genuine eraser, so that's a genuine improvement. And the new pen is a little bit shorter. which is a personal preference. For me, I don't really like that. I think that this is basically like a perfect pen, all in all, but the new one is simply different. It went in the wrong direction as far as I'm concerned, at least. So, Kindle Scribe and reading experience and image quality. Well, this being a Kindle Scribe or not, it's primarily a Kindle, so you're going to be reading a lot on it. Thankfully, the image quality is really good. The 11-inch screen and the 300 ppi and an excellent front light are paired really nicely, and in any type of reading conditions other than that bug with the color banding on images in documents, that's something that hopefully will be resolved in a future update. Other than that, everything else was quite good, with one asterisk. Overall, the content seemed a little bit darker than generally speaking, and especially when compared to my Gen 1 Kindle Scribe. In comic books, for example, you definitely can see that there's something going on software-wise, that the device is absolutely capable of producing much better balanced images, but at the moment, with the latest update, it's not calibrated that well, so it's not fully finished, and it needs some more baking powder to kind of make it fully there. So I think that it can get there, but it's not there yet. And Kindle Scribe is not really a platform that's regularly updated. So herein lies a little bit of a risk. But overall, reading, refresh rate, flipping pages, deghosting, all of that is really good on this device. Smaller frames around the device and everything else, it just feels like a really good and premium device, and it should, because it costs $100 more. This being a Scribe version of a Kindle, it has its writing capabilities, and the writing capabilities, well, there's performance and there's capabilities. Performance side of things is really good. Blisteringly fast writing latency at around 10 milliseconds for an EMR pen, which is fantastic. With the 1 millimeter surface to screen distance, well, it's not perfect, like it's not really that great. I'm hoping to see much less on the non-front lit version. It's certainly better than 155 that we've had before, so that's an improvement as well compared to the older generation of Kindles. Even though the surface roughness is technically rougher than on the previous Kindle Scribe, for some reason it feels more slippery. I'm not really sure why that is, but it just does. And I preferred the writing feel on the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. That being said, it's not a deal breaker at all, it's not super glassy or anything, it's just when you compare the two, this one feels a little bit more smooth and slippery, and the other one feels a little bit more papery. So that's the writing performance and experience. However, the writing capabilities, well, that's a Kindle Scribe, and it's extremely limited. Yeah, they got like AI and all that kind of data mining stuff that I'm not going to entertain at all. What it does really well, but it's extremely limited at what it can do. So let's put it just like that. Pens are good. The pressure sensitivity could be calibrated better, again, which is a little bit of a departure from what we've had on the original Kindle Scribe, so that's a little bit of a disappointment as well. So it's not like a straight up improvement across the board, it's a little bit kind of jaggedy all over the place. Now let's dive into the display analysis framework, or the DAF portion of the video, where I'm using my recently recalibrated and retightened up DAF analysis after a year and a half of using it, fine-tuning it, and gathering a lot of data to have plenty data points to be able to actually configure it to something that's for the purpose of reviewing and measuring e-paper devices. So we start the analysis with the readability as usual, and here we can see, the combined 300 ppi, a no CFA layer because this time we have pure black and white, and 11-inch size. Absolutely transfers and is reflected in the readability scores here at 100% blackness, 70% blackness, and all the way down to 50% blackness. We have very good performance on the black and white Kindle Scribe Gen 3. Going to thin fonts, when they are large, they are really nicely rendered, and that sharpness remains okay, albeit when we step down to 6 points, it's starting to struggle a little bit. And if we step down to, we're starting to lose quite a lot of cohesion here in readability. It's still legible, but not in a good way. So there's quite a bit of a drop here when doing thin fonts, small thin fonts at 50% of darkness. When we're looking at thick fonts, we're looking for bleed around, the little smaller fonts, and at large fonts and medium fonts, it's really, really nicely rendered, and it's very good to see quite a bit of clarity here, like really, really good clarity and really good score on the smaller and thick fonts. And when stepping down to 50%, it's only going to become a little bit easier because we don't have as many black pigments, and then it becomes actually quite good and consistent. Contrast and uniformity is looking okay, although we do have a little bit of kind of unevenness here in the black color. So we have excellent lighting conditions, average, and poor lighting conditions, rendering of a pure white and a pure black color. We see this is without the front light at all. We have predictably good 71, 49, 28. So 70, 50, 30 is a good performance. It's getting a little bit on a darker side of things in poorer lighting conditions, but overall, it's okay performance as far as the whiteness goes. The black color is okay at 42, 67, 81. 81 is great, but here, typically in average, it should be at around 7, and here it should be at around maybe 48, in exceptional cases, 50. But we can see that that irregularity is kind of hampering that score a little bit in excellent and average lighting conditions because, that spottiness is interfering with the uniformity of the content here. When we turn the front light to 50%, we can see that even in excellent lighting conditions, it does brighten things up ever so slightly, but in average and poor lighting conditions, it does bring things up. We don't have too much washing out of the black color, and at 100%, we see that we have, across the board, it's affecting all of the things, and it's washing out the black color only in poor lighting conditions. Reflectivity has a very, very similar character to the one that we've seen on the Colorsoft. So we have good, healthy amount of breaking out the sharpened edge, and then controlled diffusion around the source of the reflection here. And we do mute down the intensity in quite a good way, actually. So reflectivity, very, very similar to the one of the Colorsoft, and it's fairly nice. This spec here, I thought that it was actually dust, but then I saw that it was not, and on my own device, that was actually one of the not dead pixels, but dead areas there. So it's not really impervious to that, and it didn't have many on my unit, but that one was there. Ghosting performance is actually excellent on combined and text. On graphics, it does have quite a bit of stuff kind of lingering around, but we can see from the score and from the clarity here that the text and combined are scoring really well, and the one that's actually scored is the combined, because that's your usual type of thing, text and images or graphics, and how it's cleared up after 15 pages or 10-15 pages. And in this case, yeah, it cleared up quite nicely. Front light calibration is really, really similar to how it's calibrated on the Colorsoft, except that we have predictably lower intensity amounts at 50, 75, and, well, across the range, and the maximum. So maximum was 370, I think, lux on the Colorsoft. Here we're down to 340. This is around 85, 80 something, and this is a little bit lower as well. So this curve is very, very usable, and it's really important that it gives you a nice usable range across the board. So in the middle of it, you have quite a lot of usable range. In the maximum and the minimum, you really do have a lot of flexibility with the front light. And we can see a much nicer, more normal type of curve of the light here. So the fully cold light is what, 6,300, 6,500 something ish kelvins, and we're down to 2,775 in the warm. These need to be flipped. And combined they're 4,161. So a little bit warmer side when completely combined, but still quite a pleasant thing to see. The intensity does bow a little bit more than what we've seen on the Colorsoft. So the difference between the intensity in fully warm, fully cold, and mixed is a little bit more pronounced here than it was on the Colorsoft, but overall it's a nice type of a performing front light. Writing latency on the black and white front lit version of the Kindle Gen 3 is exceptional. It's 10.43 here measured, but overall I think it was 10.1015 milliseconds average, which means that sometimes it was actually even under 10 milliseconds, oftentimes, because I do 10 runs and then I average that out. So absolutely blistering and excellent performance as far as the writing latency goes. Some of the best that I've ever seen as far as EMR technology is concerned. Surface to screen distance has been lowered from 155 in Scribe Gen 2 down to 1 millimeter here on Gen 3. And while that's a significant jump forward, absolutely it is when you look at it in isolation, but when you actually compare this to any other or most of the other front lit devices, this is perfectly standard, because most of the devices that have a front light have 1 millimeter surface to screen distance. And finally now Kindle Scribe is joining that standard as well with the Gen 3. Refresh time from a page of full mixed content down to a blank page is actually quite good at 220-ish milliseconds, 23 here, so 223 milliseconds. So a little bit more time than the Colorsoft, but still significantly faster than, I think it was significantly faster than the previous Gen 2 version, and overall than competitor devices. This is a snappy device, so it's able to very quickly flip pages and clear out the content as well, and it can clear it out in a good way, as we've seen in the ghosting. So overall, quite good performance for the refresh time on the Gen 3 black and white front lit Kindle Scribe. That's a lot. If we take a look at the surface roughness of the of this one, this is interesting because it has on paper extremely similar value for a surface roughness at 0.363, almost identical, if not identical, with the Colorsoft. However, the profile curve is quite a bit different. We still have that artificial uniformity, which has nothing to do with paper-like performance. And we do have occasional peaks here, just to kind of make it a little bit more, papery. But this thing that you're going to be spending, that your tip is going to be spending most of the time on, is too dense, and the peaks and valleys are too shallow for it to feel paper-like. And I believe that this profile curve itself, not the intensity that's, that's affected by occasional peaks and things, but the overall profile curve character, that's the reason why the Gen 3 feels smoother and more slippery to write on than the Gen 2 did, and the Gen 1. Battery life expectancy in reading without the front light, you can expect 66.67 hours of continuous reading per charge, down to 50 hours when using front light at 50%, and down to 16.67 hours per charge with the front light at 100%. And with writing, we have the same 16.67 hours per charge, but continuous writing and without the front light. And then as we start introducing that front light, it starts to steal away. So 50%, 14.28, 100%, 11.1. Even at 100% front light, it's still over 10 hours of continuous writing, so that's a good performance overall, although not as good as the previous generations of Kindle Scribe. So let's take a quick look at the comparison, how the black and white front-lit Kindle Scribe compares to the Colorsoft and its predecessor Gen 2. Now this is the same type of comparison that I've already looked in detail in the Colorsoft in-depth review video. So I'm going to spend way less time here and just kind of go over these categories. And if you're interested in more details, you can take a look at the Colorsoft review for the final results chapter as well. So in readability, we can see that the new version is better than the previous Gen 2. Naturally, it's dominating the Colorsoft because it's a black and white panel. This continues in the contrast department here. However, we can see that the contrast itself is not marginally, but actually meaningfully better on the Gen 2 version of the Kindle Scribe. So we have a little bit of a less good of a performance in contrast and uniformity, both contrast and uniformity, not as good as it was in the previous Kindle version. And that is reflected in the final scores as well. Reflectivity is of a very similar character like the new Colorsoft as well, and it outperforms the old Gen 2 ever so slightly, but overall it's a very, very similar character and very similar performance. Ghosting is where it actually comfortably outperforms the previous Gen 2 version of Kindle Scribe, as well as the surface roughness, with that asterisk that I said because of the surface roughness character, my subjective feel when writing is that it feels more slippery than the other one, even though it has higher surface roughness coefficient. Refresh time is slightly faster, so we can see that it's definitely a little bit faster, but nothing that really dominates the old version. It's just a little bit faster. Writing latency is where it actually dominates, something that was already like really, really good on the Gen 2, but on the Gen 3, it's taking it to the next level because 10 milliseconds EMR, truly impressive. Surface distance, as mentioned, from 155 to 1 millimeter, improvement, and a battery life, unfortunately, lower than the previous gen. So all of that means that in final DAF results is that yes, it does outperform the old Gen 2 e-reader category. Yes, readability, strong category, outperforms there. Definitely it will be reflected there. And in the notebook as well. And then as an e-tablet there as well. So it's fair to say that the Gen 3 version generally outperforms the Gen 2 version of Kindle Scribe. There you go. So that's the Kindle Scribe Gen 3 black and white front-lit version. Is it an improvement and a clear no-brainer improvement over the Gen 2? I don't think it is, because it's a disappointment in some areas, and in some areas it's a clear improvement, as you've already seen. The problem here is the increase in price and the fact that it's just 2 years before Gen 2, which is still a really capable and a really good device. There's no question that the 11-inch size, that the new design and everything else feels more premium, and it is nicer reading type of an experience. Absolutely is, if you're not reading images with the color banding and stuff like that. But it's also darker. It doesn't have better contrast than the other ones. Readability is better only because of the size. The battery life is not as good. The writing performance is much faster, but it's a little bit more slippery. The new pen is not as good as the old pen. The calibration of pressures is not as good as it was in the previous versions. So it's not a clear-cut situation where you can just go do a cross-section and say like, yep, across the board, it's an improvement. It's not. It's a little bit like brrr. And hopefully the DAF analysis and these different categories and this video combined with the first impressions video will give you enough data points to understand for your own personal subjective case if those improvements or regressions affect you or not. If they don't, and if the price point doesn't really deter you, well, then I believe that you will be able to enjoy this device quite a lot. If you are kind of trying and hoping to see like, oh my god, super fast refresh rate, 300 ppi, 11-inch, that's like such a good size format and all that kind of stuff, which genuinely it is, and you want to just try it out and you're coming from a different platform and maybe you just want to use it primarily for writing, a word of caution: It can do stuff, it really can, but it's incredibly limited, and you have to live in the Amazon Kindle ecosystem. So those are very, very big things that you have to be aware of, and only if all of that kind of fits you, well then I believe that this device can be a good fit. It's not a generalist, it's a specialist. It does Kindle, and it does Kindle mostly well. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell and all that kind of stuff. And do let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts, impressions, opinions are about this device, about the DAF analysis results when compared to the other devices and other versions of Kindles and all that sort of stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye.